Established in 2013, Minerdude is a 100% US-based mining hardware company. They focus on providing the highest quality GPU mining rig, which ships from their US-based warehouse and comes with a 1-year warranty on all parts. They accept crypto, wire transfers, and credit cards as payment methods. They also integrate with the top crypto operating systems like Simple Mining, Hive OS, and MinerStat. With the average delivery time of just 1 to 5 days, you can rest assured that your order will get to you extremely fast. Please visit minerdude.com or email support@minerdude.com for questions.
We are getting to the point to where innovation is being stifled within the United States. So obviously, worldwide, perspective, there are different things we could get into, but from the perspective of, if you're in the United States, you're participating within proof of work mining. Look, this is a big deal we need to talk about. In the US at this time, we are seeing innovation stifled by, of course, policies being set in place by, essentially the White House. The Biden administration in general is definitely stifling innovation here in this, basically within the proof of work cryptocurrency mining space. White House suggests banning proof-of-work mining used by Bitcoin. The report discusses Bitcoin's energy use and its negative effects on the environment while suggesting possible executive action in the future. Per President Biden's executive order, the White House Office of Science and Technology submitted its report on Bitcoin mining's climate impact. The report alludes to possible executive orders and legislation from Congress to limit or eliminate proof-of-work mining. Some of the cited resources have been criticized for biases to certain industries and spreading misinformation. The White House Office of Science and Technology released a report claiming Bitcoin mining negatively impacts the environment and hints towards banning proof of work. Quote, electricity usage from digital assets is contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, additional pollution, noise, and other local impacts depending on markets, policies, and local electricity sources, reads the report. The first section of the report serves as an introduction while also hinting towards banning proof-of-work mining, which is used to mine Bitcoin if regulatory action fails to influence U.S. climate goals. Quote, should these measures prove ineffective at reducing impacts, the administration should explore executive actions, and Congress might consider legislation to limit or eliminate the use of high energy intensity consensus mechanisms for crypto asset mining, end quote, per the report. Next, the document explores how mining can affect electrical grids. The Office of Science and Technology asserts that Bitcoin mining facilities create added stress on the power grid that leads to blackouts, fire hazards, and equipment deterioration. Except in practice, this isn't what we've seen. Typically in Texas, right, what we've seen which is a grid that sits on its own, okay? We had the winter storms that happened. The Texas grid, rightfully so, got a bunch of pushback and kickback and a lot of pointing at you fingers for, essentially not being, having blackouts for about a week and not being able to support itself. Now, there's a few things there that nuanced, right, that people need to understand. One is things weren't renterized properly. Anytime you have a company that's in control that is making a lot of money, they're going to make poor decisions in favor of making more money. Sure, that stuff is going to happen. The fact that we are in a position where we had one of the hottest summers ever and did not experience blackouts should be pretty telling here, though, because a winter storm is a little bit different than something like heat, right? And cooling the homes means that it was required a lot more electricity from the grid. What prevented blackouts and rolling blackouts this time around in Texas during this relatively higher demand than the previous winter storm? Well, to be completely frank, it was Bitcoin mining because, as we could see, millions of dollars were paid back to the Bitcoin miners within Texas to provide energy back to the grid. So, in fact, as they are stating that it creates added stress on the grid and leads to blackouts, in practice, the actual opposite is happening as proven in the state of Texas and the grid right now. So this report is clearly biased and not taking into account the reality of the situation and is clearly, obviously trying to make it sound like something it isn't. which is ridiculous. The report also claims that Bitcoin miners will raise the average electricity cost for local consumers. Now, this part I do agree with, as we've seen. In Texas, like I've said, there needs to be regulatory pushback when they decide that you are a certain size, therefore you get these payouts. But if you're a smaller size business owner, you're going to pay for those bailouts or those shutoffs. I don't think that's okay. I think the system needs to get shifted a little bit more. So while yes, it did, this system in Texas did work for the, unprecedented summer heat, it didn't, and it did end up costing consumers more. I am obviously in that position as well. And I'm not happy about it. They need to figure out how they're going to regulate that better. So I do agree with that portion. Depending on the energy intensity of the technology used, crypto assets could hinder broader effects to achieve net zero carbon pollution consistent with U.S. climate commitments and goals. I should clarify too on this last one, because the cause is a little different. The cause isn't that the actual miners are utilizing more power, thereby pushing the price up. It's not a supply-demand issue. It is a supply-demand issue, but a little different, right? It's because when the demand goes up, the supply is coming from the miners, and the electricity company is paying the miners to turn off their rigs, which in turn they're passing that cost on to the consumer. That is exactly why the prices in Texas are going up, okay? Finally, the last section concludes that there are ways in which Bitcoin mining can actually benefit U.S. climate goals, although this is a much smaller section. Mining that installs equipment to use vented methane to generate electricity for operations is more likely to help rather than hinder U.S. climate objectives, per the report. So that's good that that was pointed out. Another thing that we need to point out is actually delivery of all of the wind generators in Texas. Now, this is a new one that's coming out. Everybody's kind of aware of the natural gas, flare gas mining operations, right? That's pretty common. People are aware of that in Texas. Now, another thing in West Texas that's happening is there's a ton of wind generation. If you guys have never been to West Texas, let me tell you, it's windy. It's windy as hell. There's a ton of potential for that. Of course, we could get into the arguments of it still needing, traditional oil to lubricate it, blah, blah, blah. Not really the point of my argument here. The thing is that there's a ton of wind power generation out in West Texas that can't get fully delivered to places that can utilize it. So there's a new kind of startup that is similar, right, to flare gas, but for the windmills that are starting to pop up in West Texas as well, because it can't get the full power generation out and sold to everybody. So therefore you can kind of capitalize on that from the mining perspective. This is a new trend that is coming out. A lot of people, I think it's made it to the talking points within Texas on the Bitcoin mining portions. But if you aren't in Texas, you may not be aware of that. I don't think it's really been made aware of in, I guess, what would you call it? Mainstream cryptocurrency media or something along those lines. It's not talked about in Bitcoin Magazine or CoinDesk or anything like that quite yet. It'll get there though. You'll see it. You'll see basically a reduction of power waste and power storage with crypto mining for windmill generation here soon. That's going to be coming. It's not coming. It's happening now. It's just not being talked about, right? Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.